Well, good afternoon to you. 306 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Gordon Chang joins us. The China expert will react to the meeting between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping taking place right now in San Francisco. Jonathan Kaufman is here at 4 o'clock today. He's a man who flew in from Detroit, tried to get to that March for Israel rally yesterday, and was stranded at Dulles as anti-Israel bus drivers refused to take a bunch of Jewish people to the rally. In fact, that's not the only incident like that. We've got more of those. We'll tell you about them. Mark Green, congressman from Tennessee, joins us at 4:30 today. He's with the Homeland Security Committee, a part of some questioning today to some of the top villains in our government. And then Chip Roy is here, the congressman from Texas, as we take a look at Speaker Johnson's effort to shove the can ever so slightly down the road on spending. Chip Roy among a bunch of congressmen not happy with that. We'll talk about that. That's ahead. And you can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. San Francisco really did roll out every red item they could today to welcome Xi Jinping. The streets of San Francisco were lined with people holding up red banners, red flags, Chinese writing. I saw some commentators point out that it looked more like China than China in San Francisco today to welcome Xi Jinping, of course, because it's very exciting that America's top adversary has arrived in San Francisco, and he deserves a hero's welcome, and no less. So that's what they gave him. They scrubbed the whole city clean. They kicked out all the homeless people, got them out of the way of the cameras, got rid of the needles, the human excrement, and they welcomed Xi Jinping in style. They said, welcome, welcome. Thank you for all of our cheap plastic crap. You make our economy run. And here comes Xi Jinping. And he met with the President of the United States already today. They've been meeting. And one of the first things we heard our president say in public to Xi Jinping was, "It's just so great to see you."
Well, Mr. President, it's good to see you again. We've spent many hours together over the last 10 or 12 years, and to host you in the United States is a great honor.
Remember, he said, he has this lie that he whips around all the time, that he's flown with Xi Jinping and traveled with him and hiked in the mountains. And he's got all these crazy stories that he spends every waking moment with Xi Jinping. This is one of the many tall tales Joe Biden has told. And so even here, it's like we've spent so many hours together over these last 12 years. Have you?
10 or 12 years, and to host you in the United States is a great honor and a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Particularly as it relates to our summit today.
It's a great honor, and it's a pleasure.
We've known each other for a long time. We haven't always agreed, which was not a surprise to anyone. But our meetings have always been candid, straightforward, and useful. I've never doubted what you've told me in terms of your candid nature in which you speak. I value our conversation because I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly.
Well, that's true. The leaders of these two countries should definitely understand one another. Unfortunately, Biden is on one end of that table, and he's hard to understand, even for himself. Joe Biden. Here's the thing. I want the United States to succeed in all of these diplomatic exchanges with China, but does it freak you out to have Joe Biden be the guy, have to handle all this? Yes, of course it does. Of course it does. Remember, what was it, Hillary's campaign? People asking, who do you want answering the 3 a.m. phone call? Not Joe Biden. Biden's not even going to wake up when the phone starts ringing at 3 a.m. That's not going to happen. And so you get very nervous. How much is he going to sell us out, right? Isn't that the fundamental question? How much is this guy and the people around him, how much are they going to sell us out in these meetings? Because China's just been bigfooting us with Biden in the driver's seat. It's awful, actually. And today, what they're telling us they're doing today? Here's what the agreements are. They always do this ahead of time. Like, Xi Jinping doesn't show up unless they have some sort of agreement ahead of time. The rest of it's theatrics. All the negotiating, all the agreements, they're always done in advance. These guys can pretend like they're working out details. They're not. Xi Jinping doesn't show up unless he's getting something out of this. So what is he getting? Well, one, just the theatrics of it all, just the symbolism, the imagery. Don't you think he's getting a huge domestic boon out of this? Right? We talked to Gordon Chang. We're going to talk to Gordon Chang coming up here at 3:30 about from time to time, the issues that he has domestically. within the Communist Party and his efforts to consolidate power there in China. But just imagine what these images must look like back in China. And they'll get back. Xi Jinping arrives in America to a hero's welcome. The streets of San Francisco are lined with Chinese communist flags welcoming Xi Jinping. Biden and his demeanor, you don't even have to speak English. Biden and his demeanor, weak, old, feeble, standing alongside Xi Jinping. Standing along Xi Jinping, who's has no great physique, but the guy's at least a lot more alive than our president is. And so they're going to send these images back, and it's going to go a long way for him. Look at us, the way we are held at the top. We're the top. That's the message he'll be able to send to his own people. And after all the abuses that they've meted out upon us, right? How many Americans have died due to fentanyl? Over 70,000 a year. Oh, we lose over 100,000 broadly to drug overdoses a year. Most of that comes from China. Almost all of it actually comes from China. It goes to the cartels in Mexico. They put all the chemicals together, comes into the United States, kills over 100,000 Americans. Yeah, that's Xi Jinping. How about COVID? Where did that come from? Oh, that's right, China. Came from China. Who lied about it? China. They lied. Who covered it up? It was China. People disappeared who had the truth about all of this. Who steals our intellectual property? China. Who uses slave labor in order to construct the goods that we consume here in the United States? China. Who destroys the environment so that American liberals can export their pollution to some other country and then pretend to feel good about what we're doing here as we destroy American jobs? China. It's all China. Every time. Who's funding all of these authoritarians around the globe, purchasing their energy sales? China. Leading to the deaths of Americans and certainly our allies. Over and over and over again. So the message today is great to see you. It's a great honor. Remember the left, they would always rag on Trump. They would rag on Trump when he'd have these meetings with world leaders where he would say nice things about some of these guys. He'd butter them up. And Kim Jong-un didn't fire off test missiles or anything like it. Trump held him at bay, read his personality, knew that the guy wanted to be sucked up to a little bit to calm him down, right? And that definitely happened. But here you have the worst combination of all of it. China taking advantage of us and Biden sucking up to him. So if the sucking up is a part of a strategy to hold them at bay and it works, fantastic. Totally for that. But if you're just sucking up and they're taking advantage of you, you're a loser. You're a loser. You're a total loser. This strategy isn't working. Tom Cotton was on Fox News today. He had this to say about what Biden should do, which of course means he won't.
What Joe Biden has projected all year long, though, is this desire to have any small indication of progress, just the fact that they want to pick up the phone. I worry a little bit about what concessions he might grant, or just the way he framed this summit meeting is that we want to improve our relationship. We don't have a relationship with China. It's not like these are two teenagers dating. China is our #1 adversary in the world. Sure. And what we should be doing is focusing on ways that we can get the better of China to stop them from cheating on their trade deals or hacking into U.S. government computers or floating spy balloons over America, none of which I'm sure Joe Biden is going to raise with Xi Jinping today.
So here's the thing. So remember I told you there are these prearranged deals. They always have something that they want to work out. They're working on these topics even though it's already been worked out ahead of time. And the deals are this. Global warming. What a joke. What a complete joke. Global warming and fentanyl, supposedly. Now, how's that going to work? Exactly. So global warming, let's take part one. Global warming. To the extent that anybody's going to give something up here on, quote, global warming, guess which side's actually going to do it? It'll be us. It'll be us. We'll hurt more energy production in the United States. We'll make things more expensive for American citizens. We will further destroy communities that depend upon American energy production for their very survival. That is how this is going to go. And then we're going to divert resources that should be spent on the American people, and instead we're going to send them to China. You know, all this green technology, the solar panels, all the minerals we need, all the chips we need for all this crap, China, 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 China. So they come out ahead, we come out behind. And so Biden's policy today is one of appeasement, one of bowing, kowtowing to China on this stupid issue of, quote, global warming. How dumb can we possibly be? This is late-stage empire stuff. This frivolous nonsense. On that issue, just to put a finer point on it, there was a New York Times piece yesterday. It was Corey joined me for dinner last night. We were out, had a great dinner with a bunch of friends. And as we were headed over, driving in the car, right, I get this New York Times push alert. And the New York Times has a story up about senior citizens who are dying due to heat deaths. Heat deaths and the frequency with which that happens. Yeah, here it is. Health risks linked to climate change are getting worse, experts warn. They say one of the starkest findings is that heat-related deaths of people older than 65 have increased by 85% since the 1990s. This is the New York Times report yesterday. According to modeling that incorporates both changing temperatures and demographics, people in this age group, along with babies, are especially vulnerable to health risks like heat stroke. As global temperatures have risen, older people and infants now are exposed to twice the number of heat wave days annually as they were from 1986 to 2005. Okay, so they're saying heat deaths, that single category, heat deaths, has gone up over these last 2 decades or so. And it's a big deal. So what was the first thing I did when I opened this article? I searched for cold deaths. I said, show me how many cold deaths there have been. Guess what they don't tell you about? The word cold does not appear in this article once. And why does that matter? Well, because anybody who's ever looked at this knows that more people die due to extreme cold than due to extreme heat. Heat is easier to manage for humanity, especially with those dreaded fossil fuels. It's easier to manage heat. Cold, a lot more difficult, actually, and it kills a lot more people. And so the secret to this story is that more old people are surviving. On net, we are losing fewer old people to extreme temperatures now. We're losing fewer old people to extreme temperatures. More people are surviving now than 20 years ago. So, in fact, warmer temperatures, whatever you attribute them to, are leading to more humans living and thriving. I'm sorry, that's just true. And the New York Times doesn't bother to tell their readers anything about this. Instead, they're doing a doomsday story about how old people are dying due to heat stroke. What about the cold? What about that effect? Because that kills a lot more people. Oh, they don't bother telling you. So once again, the sin of omission in a major American newspaper. The old gray lady is surviving because of the temperature. Now, the other piece, fentanyl. Biden has this agreement with Xi Jinping. Oh, we're going to get control of the fentanyl problem. China's going to target the precursor chemicals. They're going to stop all that fentanyl from flowing into the United States. And that's all well and good, but not really. Because, first of all, China never upholds its end of the bargain. When was the last time China upheld its end of the bargain? We've been doing this we've been playing rope-a-dope with China for decades, and they just keep stealing everything and spying on everything and using TikTok to influence our kids in the United States of America, leading voters to have no idea what's actually going on in the country thanks to Chinese influence operations. There is an endless list of Chinese lies, Chinese communist lies, that would lead you to conclude, yeah, they're not going to uphold their end of the deal here on fentanyl. And additionally, for Biden, of all people, to claim that he's getting tough on fentanyl is a scam. It is a total scam, because where does this fentanyl primarily flow through? America's southern border. The border which Biden doesn't even enforce. And the media covers that detail up. I want to emphasize that too, because I can't tell you through the years during this Biden administration, every time I read about fentanyl flowing into the United States, the New York Times can't spare a single syllable on the word Mexico. They can't even bother to tell you that our southern border is the critical entry point through which all of this is flowing. They will not tell you that because they support this open borders agenda. So for Biden to get up there and be like, I'm going to get real tough on fentanyl, I'm going to tell Xi, knock it off. It's bull crap. It's bull. He doesn't even believe in it. If he did, he'd lock down the damn border. We have over 100,000 Americans dying due to this. Every year. Every year. That's when we get to the point now where we start adding up wars. We're like, well, we don't have enough wars where we lost Americans. The Vietnam War doesn't do it. We don't get anywhere close to over 100,000 Americans lost. And that's for the entirety of the Vietnam War, not just a single year in the United States. And so Biden going to pay lip service to this fentanyl thing. It's ridiculous. I don't know. Whose idea was this? And how quickly can we fire them, please? This whole idea is insane to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Gordon Chang is going to join us here in a couple minutes, and I'll run all this past him, see what he thinks about this big meeting between Xi Jinping, greeted like a hero in the United States today, and Joe Biden, who has to take the short stairs off of Air Force One. Another wild piece of audio crossing my desk now. Senator John Kennedy is a hero. This guy, all he does is ask all of these judicial nominees to describe basic legal terms, and they all collapse under the slightest bit of scrutiny here. Here it is again today. Carrie Severino sharing this from the Judicial Crisis Network. A district judge nominee by the name of Sarah Hill was unable today to explain the difference between a stay order and an injunction. This is a judge. A judge should be able to tell you the difference between a stay and an injunction. Here's the attempt.
The difference between a stay order and an injunction.
A stay order would prohibit, an injunction would restrain the parties from taking action. A stay order, I'm not sure that I actually can give you the...
Okay.
Apparently, according to Carrie Severino, Dick Durbin would later congratulate her on passing, unquote, passing the Kennedy bar exam. In other words, that she was flying colors. She did so well when John Kennedy asked her basic things. This is pathetic. So what are the chances she makes it through? Pretty high, huh? It happens all too often. People have no business in these jobs. Keep on getting them. It's what's happening in Congress today. Coming up, Gordon Chang will be joining us at 3:30. And when we chat with him, it'll be about, China, Xi Jinping, hanging out in America right now. What does Gordon Chang think? Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, Jonathan Kaufman joins us at 4 o'clock. He's a gentleman who flew in from Detroit yesterday, landed at Dulles, and then got stuck on the tarmac because anti-Israel bus drivers refused to pick them up. It's a crazy story. Jonathan Kaufman joins us at 4. 4:30, Congressman Mark Green is here, and then at 5 o'clock, Congressman Chip Roy joins us. You can join us as well. You don't have to be a member of Congress. 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Joe Biden very excited to see Xi Jinping in San Francisco today.
Well, Mr. President, it's good to see you again. We've spent many hours together over the last 10 or 12 years, and to host you in the United States is a great honor and a pleasure, particularly as it relates to our summit today.
Yeah, Biden and Xi have been meeting today. They're also expected to apparently take some questions later today. That'll be a rigged affair, at least on the Chinese side, typically also on the U.S. side. But the Chinese so-called reporters will be, of course, advancing Communist Party propaganda, and we'll see how Joe Biden withstands that particular test. For more on all of this, let's bring in Gordon Chang. He's the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, and he's on the phone. You can get by the way, you can find him, of course, as always, on the platform formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Vince.
So it seems like Xi Jinping's the guy with a lot to gain here, and that we're the team with a lot to lose.
Well, certainly, because the more that we talk to China, the longer we delay in taking those measures against China that we should have been imposing a long time ago. We've had these intensive conversations with China for more than 3 decades. And while we do that, we do not defend our country. So, yes, the Chinese love talking. And, you have to ask yourself a question. I mean, what can Biden accomplish now? And what can he say now that he hasn't said over the last 3 decades? So, this is not helping us.
Yeah, the claim is that the two men are going to reach agreements on fentanyl and global warming. which to me seems ridiculous. For one, on the fentanyl front, Biden could get control of our southern border but refuses to, so he's not that serious about fentanyl. And global warming, that always results in life becoming more miserable here, and China benefits, right?
Yes. On fentanyl, we've got to face a horrible reality, and that is we're not dealing with fentanyl gangs. We're dealing with the Communist Party that wants fentanyl to come into the United States to kill Americans. The Communist Party runs a near total surveillance state, which means they know everything that these large, well-organized fentanyl gangs are doing. And we don't actually have to speculate because the Chinese officials, they inspect every container that leaves China. Chinese diplomats provide cover to the fentanyl gangs, and the gangs run their money and their proceeds through the Chinese state banking system. So this is the Communist Party, and we're never going to get anywhere just by talking to criminals like Xi Jinping. The only way we're going to get there is if we impose those costs. If, for instance, we start to issue Interpol red notices for the Politburo Standing Committee, including Xi Jinping.
So what do you think of this, of the imagery of Xi Jinping arriving today to San Francisco with Chinese flags waving all over the place to welcome him? Is this the type of event where these images get back to China as a way to bolster his domestic strength?
Yes, absolutely. For instance, when Xi Jinping's predecessor, Hu Jintao, went to a state visit at the White House, what they were looking for were those televised images that they could send back to China. And they're going to do the same thing with all of these Chinese flags that are waving as Xi Jinping passes by. And we got to remember that the Chinese consulate actually organized Chinese students to go to San Francisco to demonstrate, to praise Xi Jinping. We shouldn't be allowing any foreign government to organize expressions of political opinion on American soil.
Least of all China. And the idea that they're talking about fentanyl and global warming, fentanyl obviously a huge issue, matters a lot, but again, I don't sense any authenticity from Biden on that question. It tells you a great deal, doesn't it, Sir Gordon Chang? Because we're looking at this, and we've got China, as you know, intellectual property theft. We've got espionage everywhere. We have Chinese foreign national college students who are whose families are effectively held ransom in China unless they're also engaged in espionage against the United States. We have TikTok influence campaigns that are destroying an entire generation here in the United States. It seems like everywhere you turn, China is wielding its influence in a way that really hurts the United States.
Yes, because the Communist Party feels the U.S. is an existential threat. It feels that way not because of anything we say or do, Vince, but because of who we are. Because an insecure regime in Beijing is worried about the inspirational impact of American values and form of governance on the Chinese people, which means we will never have amicable relations with China as long as the Communist Party rules it. And we have to acknowledge that. And so far, you don't have Democrats or Republicans, liberals or conservatives, willing to go to acknowledge what China is doing and to actually be willing to impose those costs on China, which have to be severe.
Well, and the reason for that is because we've become so economically dependent on them, right?
That's one big factor. It's also the factor you mentioned that China spends enormous amounts of money and effort to try to influence American elites and ordinary Americans to support Communist Party narratives. And unfortunately, we have members of both parties who, for various reasons, do repeat Communist Party talking points. I'm not saying they're communists, but they actually say those things that the Communist Party wants them to.
How much risk are we in today with Joe Biden meeting with Xi Jinping? Are you concerned about what might go on behind closed doors?
I'm already concerned about what they've announced. So, for instance, they've announced that they're going to sign an agreement on artificial intelligence and nuclear weapons. And yes, it's a bad thing for weapons to be controlled by AI, but the problem is the agreement that they're going to sign, like 99.9999% will be unenforceable. So that means we will adhere to it and China won't, which means that China will get a very large advantage in warfare. So we shouldn't be signing any agreement with China unless we can be sure that we can enforce it. And an AI agreement, because, China's not going to let us into their nuclear weapons facilities to read tens of millions of lines of code.
Right.
So this really is dangerous.
Also, China is sending a lot of money to all of the world's authoritarians, especially those dictators that sell energy. So while we are kneecapping our own energy supply, China is buying up a tremendous amount of energy from places like Russia and Iran and funding these war machines that are causing so much trouble, aren't they, Gordon Chang?
Well, certainly. When you look at Iran, for the first 9 months of this year, China's purchases of Iranian oil was 60% above that in 2017. 2017 is important, Vince, because that was the last year before the Trump administration reimposed sanctions on the purchase of Iranian oil. So essentially, China has been financing the war against Israel.
Yes, and as a result, a bunch of American troops have been injured as well as Iran and its proxies keep firing on us.
Absolutely, and one American contractor was killed. We should be getting not only the Iranian proxies, we should be going after Iran itself. And a friend of mine in the Middle East is saying that one of the things that Xi Jinping is going to say today to Joe Biden is to demand that we leave Iran alone. That's the last thing we should be doing. We should be making sure that Iran never sells another drop of oil because, look, they've been attacking us. These are acts of war. And Biden sort of thinks, oh, let's just have 3 separate airstrikes, which mean nothing to Iran or the proxies.
Yeah. Also, if we just increased our own energy production meaningfully, we wouldn't have to spend so much time attacking everybody else. It's like I think it makes a lot of sense, but we don't do that. Why not?
Well, it's because there's a leftist ideology. When the Trump administration came into office, the idea was that the U.S. would ramp up energy production, which would not only make us self-sufficient so we wouldn't be held hostage to any regime in the world, but also that we would be able to sell hydrocarbons around the world and exert leverage because of that. That's a great plan. It actually was working until Biden came in and decided, no, we shouldn't be extracting oil and gas in the U.S. We should be buying it from Venezuela. Huh?
Yeah, it's mentally ill, honestly, and very destructive. But it goes right along with what China desires for us to do, which is to be self-destructive at their encouragement. What do you know anything, Gordon Chang, about how much China continues to cooperate militarily with some of these other authoritarian countries? You know, we've had some reporting in the past about joint military exercises between China and places like North Korea and Iran and Russia. Is that still an active military and growing relationship?
Well, yes. China is exercising with Russia at an increased pace, also with North Korea and with Iran. But China's also been selling weapons. The weapons that the Houthis have been using, those come from China. We know that because in 2021 and this year, the U.S. Navy interdicted shipments of Chinese weapons to Yemen. Also, we know that Hamas has Chinese weapons, which presumably came from Iran, and Hamas has North Korean weapons, and those North Korean weapons could not have been sold into the Middle East without China's approval.
Yes. Yeah. North Korea is a kind of a weird thing because of all the sanctions on North Korea. I understand that a lot of ships that float into North Korea bringing supplies often do it with false flags. They fly various flags in order to justify why they're bringing all these goods to North Korea. That has to be all done with China's permission, right?
Yes, and they also drop shipment in the middle of the ocean. They turn off their transponders. The issue here is, yes, the Chinese and the North Koreans are villains, but we know all of this is going on and we permit it. So this is on us. This is, for instance, on Biden, and it was also on Biden's predecessors. They all knew this was going on. They didn't stop it. This is something the American people should be angry at their own presidents, as well as those guys in China and Iran and North Korea.
Gordon Chang, my suspicion, and I want to see if it's yours as well, is that Xi Jinping does want President Biden to be in office again, and that he will do what he can to get him reelected, I would assume. Do you agree? Is that something that you're looking out for? Do you expect the Chinese government, Xi Jinping, to begin exerting some sort of pressure on the United States to make it so that Biden can be reelected here?
Well, certainly China supported Biden over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primaries in the last round, and then supported Biden over Trump. I think that China's going to wait to see who the Republicans nominate, because there are a few Republicans I think that China would actually like over Joe Biden. But, you know, if it were Trump versus Biden, you can be sure China will do everything to make sure that Biden gets reelected.
And when you say everything, you mean fully meddling in our election.
Completely, like they did last time, making donations, propaganda support, God knows what else through social media. TikTok is going to become a Democratic Party tool. Just down the line, that will occur. And we know it because they did it in the past. We didn't stop them. So, again, this is something that is on us.
It sure is. All right. Well, at any rate, Gordon Chang, thank you, as always, for your expertise on this visit by Xi Jinping to the United States. I really appreciate your time today, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Vince, because I really appreciate it.
Of course. It's Gordon Chang, and you can find him on Twitter, now X, at Gordon G. Chang. Please do. He's always got great things to. As we watch from a distance the sadness that has taken place in Israel after that terror attack on October 7th, there's so many stories that stand out. One of them was the story of a man called Thomas Hand. He believed that his 8-year-old daughter, Emily Hand, was killed by Hamas. And remember, he expressed a kind of gratitude that she didn't survive to be held hostage because he thought a worse outcome was coming for her. This was the audio of when he originally thought that she was dead.
They just said, "We found Emily. She's dead." And I went, "Yes!" I went, "Yes," and smiled. Because that is the best news of the possibilities that I knew. That was the best possibility that I was hoping for.
And we actually spoke with one man, originally from Ireland, who was separated from his 8-year-old daughter. She had gone to a sleepover at a friend's house who also lived in the kibbutz. And he described to us the agonizing moment after 2 days of waiting for answers. He was rescued. He finally found out that his 8-year-old daughter, Emily, had been killed.
She was either dead or in Gaza. And if you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death.
All right, so that was the way the father handled it at the time. A week ago, we learned that he has discovered, by way of the Israeli military, that she is alive. That she is alive. And of course, you imagine what he was dealing with at the time as he found all this out. Must have been a coping mechanism, of course, that this is much better than for her to have been tortured, perhaps, in the hands of Hamas. Now he knows she's alive, and it jarred him, the news reports are saying. And of course, he's hoping to get her back. She's 2 days away from her birthday as we speak. It's later this week. It's on the 17th. She's going to be 9 years old, and he says she's not even going to know it's her birthday. Well, he was on CBS this morning, and the host, Gayle King, this is Oprah's buddy, tried to lecture him about the deaths of Palestinian children. This is a bizarre piece of audio.
But now this seems to be all about politics. What do you say about that? You know, you have innocent children in Palestinians who are dying, innocent Israeli children who are dying. And no one seems to be able to say, enough, stop that.
I'm not interested in politics at all. My only concern is getting Emily back.
That's my only concern, is getting Emily back. What is wrong with you, Gayle King? Like, let's talk about Palestinian children, says Gayle King. He's like, I'm here to talk about figuring out a way to get my daughter back. That's the mission I have. I'm going to do anything I can to get her back. God bless him. God help him. Coming up, we're going to talk to Jonathan Kaufman. He's a Jewish man from Detroit, traveled to Dulles yesterday. He thought he was going to make his way to that March for Israel, and then anti-Israel bus drivers got in his way? What the heck happened? Jonathan will tell us minutes from now.